What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, joined by my guy Morgan here. And Morgan, we're back on another Victory Monday. The Lions continue their win streak. Probably the biggest, most exciting game that the Lions have had to this point. Such an emotional roller coaster, I can honestly say. I'm surprised I got any sleep last night. The way that game ended, the way that it was like literally from the start to the finish, I was convinced that I was not going to sleep, whether they had came back and won or not. But they did. They end up finishing this game 26-23, beating the Houston Texans, moving to 8-1. Uh, some just clutch last minute kicks from Jake Bates. But I don't know, man. How are you feeling this morning?
It took a while to set in, right? Because you're watching that game, and through the first half, you're like, we just might not got it today. Like, there was just some bad bounces. Just, the defense was playing well. And then, like Dan Campbell said, like a play here or there, and there'd be a crack in the foundation and they would score. So you're like making your peace. You're like, all right, they're not out of it. But at the same time, you're telling yourself this is an AFC game. If you're going to lose one, this is probably one of the ones that's okay to lose. But then I'm like, you know what though? This team has shown us time and time again, and I think this is where the team being is like good for this long has like kind of reshaping some of our habits as fans, right? And like the way we look at the games.
Yeah.
And quickly Carlton Davis picks it off, and then they don't take care of it, and then they end up scoring anyways. And you're like, okay, this is a 2-score game. And my girl is like one of the calmest like people during games, and just in general, really, she's just very even keeled. And she was sitting there. She was like, honestly, we're right there. And I was like, you're kind of right. And she she ended up being right, man. And just good complimentary football. And like you said, there's the win against Minnesota on the road was fun. The Green Bay and the monsoon, but this was certainly the most compelling, right? Because it was a big comeback, man. Like they got Mike Tirico hype at the end there. I heard. I need to go back and listen to that call, but yeah, I'm excited to sleep tonight because I did not sleep much last night. I can't even lie.
Bro, like I said, like yeah, it was. I agree with you. Like the Minnesota game was like had its moments. Obviously, like you needed like a last minute field goal to win that one. Obviously, Green Bay, there was a lot of emotion in that, and there was a lot of again like beating Dallas and blowing them out. Like there's been better games, but this one to me, like Morgan, I'm not gonna lie to you, like there were things that were clenched tighter than they've ever been clenched in my life during that game yesterday, and it is. There's so many different ways that you can like try to sum up this game. And I think we've already kind of heard it in a lot of ways, right? We've heard Carlton Davis, preach about grit. We've heard Dan Campbell talk about, just how this group is a resilient group and how they just never give up. And, Jared Goff, even in his, post-game press conference talking about like, hey, this is a team that, when they get punched in the mouth, that they're still going to continue to fight. All of those things I think are very much true. But I think if we were to just like not try to be politically correct for a moment and not worry about trying to hurt people's feelings or anything like that, the nitty gritty of this game to me, the defense bailed out this offense time and time again until they got their stuff together. And Jake Bates was the guy to help put the nail in the coffin of the Houston Texans. Like, I don't want to just completely like ignore what happened in the first half of that game offensively, because that was some of, like you said, it was some of the worst football we've seen probably since week 2 against Tampa Bay. But yet, I don't want to just like hammer on the offense about that point. What I want to do instead is, like I said, the defense bailed them out, and I think this should be a prime example, another reason why, if you have ever had anything negative to say about Aaron Glenn, you need to take it back today. That man doesn't even deserve flowers, Morgan. He deserves an entire garden. He deserves a forest for what he's been able to have this defense do, especially without Aiden. Like, this isn't just like, hey, you have Aiden Hutchinson, he's going out there doing Superman stuff, and the rest of the defense is supporting him. This is a group that does not have that premier pass rusher right now. Zadarius Smith didn't play yesterday because, again, this coaching staff is such a understanding group that they gave him the week off. But they still go out there and they play like perfectly defensively. Like, I know there's 23 points on the board, but that's not because the defense wasn't doing their job. The fact that they only scored 23 points is a testament to how good this defense played and how like well prepared Aaron Glenn has had this group, not just last week, but all season. It I don't know how else to say it other than, like I said, if you have ever said anything negative about Aaron Glenn, Give that man every bit of his flowers today. He deserves it.
Yeah, it's time to walk some of them words back. I know you and I have always been on, like, we both believed Aaron Glenn was a good coach and a good coordinator, a good play caller, however you want to cut it. But early on, most of the assets and resources that Brad Holmes and the staff put in were in the offense, and then eventually it shifted. It's balanced out now, and Aaron Glenn has plenty of pieces to work with, and you're seeing what you can get, man. Like, they got put in bad positions, like you said, held them to field goals, got turnovers, just big time stuff, because otherwise you're not in that game and you're not able to cut it to a 2-score lead in the third quarter, right? Like, to make it a game again. So yeah, I'm right there with you, and I'm excited to get Zadarius Smith in the fold because that will help. But they were manufacturing pressures. Aleem McNeil had a crazy game. Brian Branch, one of the best games I've seen him play, period. He was everywhere. Joe Mixon was talking big stuff before the game to somebody, saying he was going to run for 100 yards. 25 carries for 46 yards, Joseph. So that's a tough pill to swallow. Under 2 yards a carry,
Yeah.
and that they wanted to run the ball. You could tell that they're like, we got to run the ball. We want to keep their, And the Lions, it was a not their usual super efficient day on the ground, but they still ended up 32 carries for 105 yards. And really, some of those runs that they got Jameer out on the edge, going to the right side towards Panay, like towards the end of the game, those were chunk plays,
Yeah.
man. It was like 15 yards, 12 yards. So you could tell they were wearing on them. Houston came in, they were ready. They had the right idea. They're like, we need to not let them run the ball up our noses. And then if we can heat up Goff, they were doing a great job of that, getting guys off, getting unblocked off the edge to where there's not much Goff can do. He would come around, he has his back towards the defense for a play fake, and he gets his head around,
Yep.
and Jalen Petrie is right there. So that was the first pick. And just stuff like that. It really, like Dan Campbell said, you can't put it all on Goff. He didn't have a good day by any means. And neither did Ben Johnson, really. And you're almost like, okay, we got that out of the way, because they were on a historic clip there for like 5 games. So you got your crappy offensive output of the day, and guess what? You still beat, in my opinion, one of the scariest teams in the AFC on the road in prime time. This team's just special, man. Like, I can't say it enough. Like, sometimes I need to pinch myself, take a cold shower, and think about this, but this team is special.
No, they are, and I think that was the same sentiment that I had at the end of the game. Like, this is a special group, because it's been talked about yesterday in the broadcast. I'm sure it's going to be talked about even more so today. Teams don't typically win games like that, Morgan. When you turn the ball over 5 times in a game and you're down 15 points or more, like, I think they had said it on the broadcast, like, that hasn't happened since 1940. Like, that type of outcome in a game, have it play out that way. And so it does speak to, I just talked about Aaron Glenn. It speaks to Dan Campbell as well. And we have once again been big proponents of this since Dan took the job. Like, he's lived up to everything he said in that viral press conference. Like, everything. And these guys believe in him, they believe in each other, and that's such a huge thing. And I think it's something that gets talked about a lot in sports, but it's rare to actually see it, like, to see it in that context. You and I were talking before we started recording, like, look at the San Francisco 49ers yesterday, right? They have a very similar situation where they need a last minute field goal from their kicker to win that game. But before that field goal happens, like, you have Deebo Samuel literally putting his hands on his teammates, his long snapper and his kicker, because they had missed some field goals, like, turning on them, putting the blame on someone other than just taking responsibility for what you and your offense should be doing, right? You guys are having to kick field goals because your offense isn't converting. The Lions could have been the exact same way. Jared Goff threw, like, I agree with you. Some of those weren't on him, but some of those throws, like, I think he was seeing the field well. I think he was making the right decisions. The ball just wasn't coming out well. Some of that was pressure. Some of it was just like some head scratchers on, like, why is the ball coming out funny and out of your hand that way? It would have been so easy for an Aleem McNeil to turn on Jared Goff and be like, hey, how about you, like, actually convert a third down? How about you do this? How about you do that? You don't see that on this Lions team. You don't hear that coming out of the locker room at halftime. All you're hearing is one voice in Dan Campbell saying, like, hey, this group needs to step it up, but we believe that this group is going to help. And that's exactly how it played out. And so, like, like I said, it's something that I feel like gets said a lot in sports, but you rarely get to see it to this degree. And it goes right back to what you're saying. This is a special group.
Yeah, and they truly like they've. You can tell this core of this team has been together for a minute. Like you go back to the 2021 guys that Campbell always talks about. The original draft class, Goff. Yada yada. You guys know who I'm talking about. And they care, man. It was cool to see them so hyped for Jake Bates too. Like they did the little Bates was talking in the phone going down the tunnel where the Lions social media team has them break down, and you hear Brian Branch like in the background telling him he's cold, like best kicker in the what nation. And I'm like, man, I love Brian Branch. Like he's just coming in. He's really spreading his wings as like a person too. I think we're starting to see more of the personality. And no, I'm not talking about the double, like the Stone Cold Steve Austin double bird thing. I'm talking about like him. I'm talking about him being on like talk shows and talking after the game to people. So that's cool to see as a, a little sidebar. But yeah, man, you can tell this team cares, and it's an atmosphere and a culture that's been just like meticulously crafted by Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, because I do think they're really deliberate. I know it sounds corny and kind of cliche, but I do think they're really deliberate with the types of personalities they bring into the fold, right? Like it pays
Yeah.
dividends, man, because these guys just don't care. And to your point about the ball coming out funky, like even on that one, I swear every JMO had 3 catches for 53 yards. Every one of them things was tough. Like he bobbled the one, but then he got crunched. The one Jared threw, it was a duck. Even Collinsworth, I think, called it a duck coming out. And it was the one, it looked like JMO's ribs got blasted and he was fine afterwards. But yeah, they pick him up, man. And no one pointed fingers. Just, hey, let's just keep plucking away. It's a sign of a resilient, like I think Dan Campbell said, that resiliency. It's just a good test.
Yep.
It's another really good test. I'm so happy.
It
I
is.
could tell
And
you
it's
what.
like, again, this is what a championship team needs to do, right? Like this is what they have to be able to demonstrate is like, hey, like Dan said, even on your worst day, even when nothing is going well, can you still find ways to win? And they did. And I love the fact that you brought up Brian Branch because listen, we're going to talk about Jake Bates in a minute because he deserves like every bit of a conversation. But there's a couple other guys that I do want to shout out. Like Brian Branch is one. I thought he was playing amazing in coverage, especially in that second half because Tank Dell looked like he was about to be on one of those types of tears where he was just consistently getting open on some of these shorter routes and creating great separation. They started to shift Brian Branch over there, and that stuff started to cut out very very quickly. And he's just been consistently ascending, right? I know Kirby is leading in the interceptions, and I know Brian Branch is right there behind him with 4, but BB is on that All Pro track. Like watching him and Petrie play on opposite sides when they were both on the field, like you see the value of having a versatile nickel or having a player that can play nickel and safety. Like if you can get a player like those two, man, does your defense have something very, very special. And so wanted to definitely piggyback off what you're saying about what Brian Branch was able to do because I think he had a number of great pass breakups yesterday. Carlton Davis with those 2 interceptions, even though only like one of them actually I think even turned into points, but like again the timeliness of it, the ability to like inject energy into your team of like okay, like hey, we're starting to turn things around is such a huge thing for him in that team. So really really excited about those two on the defensive side. I thought Panay had a fantastic game. We don't get to talk about Panay nearly enough, which is crazy because he's arguably the best player on that offense. But to your point about like some of those outside runs, a lot of those outside runs had Panay pulling and leading the way for Ja. And what a stage to be able to see Panay be able to demonstrate how talented he is as a football player. Like you and I have said it, I think since last year. Best tackle in football, regardless of left or right. Best tackle in football. All right, Morgan. So talked about those players, but I mean, again, the man of the hour that definitely deserves more talking. It's something that doesn't happen a lot at Pride of Detroit. Not that we don't love special teams players, not that we don't love kickers and punters, but it's just rare for us to ever really be able to praise them this way. But Jake Bates deserves it, right? We heard about it on the broadcast. He was, selling bricks before he decided to give, football another chance, going to the UFL, hitting some big kicks over there, and then that opening the door for his opportunity with Detroit. But Morgan, like these are clutch kicks. Again, no shade to the UFL. Those were some clutch kicks that he had to make there too. But this is like the NFL makes or breaks kickers. Like you miss these types of kicks and these types of moments, and you never get another opportunity ever again in the NFL for some people. So like just talk about like how clutch those moments were for him, and what that actually, what do you think that like gives to this team going forward?
I think it's huge for Bates and the Lions, right? Like Bates hitting the 58 yarder. Like I was like, oh, this is a big kick because it cut it to 3. And I was like, okay, I hope you can
Mm-hmm.
hit this. And then he hit it, snuck it in there, but had distance. And those are really his, like, he's hit a couple clutch kicks, but he's still a younger guy. Sorry, my cat's over here whiling. But then the
You're good.
52 yarder, right? Like, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I would not want to be a kicker. I put that out there. I give those people credit because that's a pressure situation. Like the whole game's riding on this, little person. It's a big man's game for the most part. And you got this little person not even wearing pads deciding the fate of the game. Always been a strange thing to me. So when he hit that 52 yarder though, man, I'm sure it's just a big confidence boost to him. Being able to hit that kick in front of that crowd in that moment, it's just got to do wonders for your confidence. And he's from Texas, right? That's what they said.
Yeah, from that, like that, yeah, from that area. Yep.
So cool, so good. Like even better for him. And I hope we found our kicker, like our, the long-term answer.
I think you said it perfectly. I think like the Lions do. I think they have their kicker of the future. I think they have someone that, again, will make it easier for Dan to make some of these, clutch moments where he's having to decide, should they take points? Should they kick a field goal? Should they take the points? Should they punt it? Should they go for it on fourth down? Like all of those things are now going to be, kind of taken care of with having the ability of Bates to be able to make these types of kicks. So, like we said, clutch game, emotions all over the place. But this team is once again showing why I think, like we've said, they're the best team in football, period. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video, guys. If you guys have any other additional thoughts, let us know in the comment section. Let us know how excited you are about this win. What stood out to you? How are you feeling with this team being 8-1 at this point in time? And where do you think they go going forward? If you're always looking for more additional Lions content, you guys already know, head over to prideofdetroit.com. You can find all of that stuff over on the website. Be sure to also hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell over here on YouTube. Those things help us out immensely, and we will be sure to catch you guys in the next one. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.